A cold, damp shelter sat at the outskirts of town, a place where hope seemed to slip away in the shadows of its walls. Among the rows of dogs, one stood apart from the rest. His fur was a patchwork of dark colors and old scars, and his eyes, sharp and intense, seemed to look right through you. His name was Diesel, a German shepherd who had seen more than any dog should. His reputation was well known: aggressive, untrusting, and utterly untamable. No one wanted him. No one except Claire. Claire had never planned on adopting a dog, especially not one like Diesel. She had come to the shelter on a whim, thinking she might spend the afternoon petting a few friendly puppies. But as soon as she laid eyes on him, his stillness, the way he watched her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine, something in her shifted. She didn't know it yet, but this decision would change both of their lives forever. She had never expected to be here, let alone considering adopting a dog with Diesel's reputation. She had come simply out of curiosity, but as she approached the corner where he stood, her heart skipped a beat. Diesel wasn't barking like the other dogs, wasn't wagging his tail in excitement. He was just standing there, staring at her as if he was waiting for something. Claire felt something stir within her, a deep sense that this dog wasn't beyond saving. His eyes, full of pain and distrust, told her that maybe, just maybe, he needed her. A shelter worker approached, her voice low and cautious. "That's Diesel," she said, her eyes flicking nervously toward him. "He's been here the longest. He's aggressive, untrusting. We've tried everything, but no one's ever wanted him. Not anymore." Claire didn't look away. Diesel wasn't just a dog who had been abandoned. He was a dog who had been failed. And Claire could see that. She didn't know why, but she felt a fierce determination stir inside her. "I'll take him," she said, her voice unwavering. The worker raised an eyebrow, surprise flashing in her eyes. "Are you sure? Diesel's not an easy dog to handle. He's been hurt. He's been abandoned. It'll take more than just a leash to help him." But Claire didn't hesitate. She could feel it, an undeniable pull, a bond she couldn't explain. Diesel needed her, and she needed him. The worker handed her the paperwork, her tone now more somber. "If you adopt him, you'll need more than patience. He's been through a lot. His trauma may never go away." "I understand," Claire said softly. The cage door creaked open, but Diesel didn't move. His dark eyes studied her, calculating, as if wondering if he could trust her. Claire stepped closer, cautiously clipping the leash to his collar. His body stiffened, but he didn't resist. There was a quiet understanding between them, a silent pact. As she led him out of the shelter, Claire felt the weight of the leash in her hand more than she expected. Diesel was large, powerful, and unpredictable. She had no idea what she was stepping into, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning of a journey neither of them could have predicted. The drive home was tense. Diesel sat beside her in the car, his eyes locked on her every movement. She had read books on dog training, watched countless videos, and spoken to experts, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of bringing a dog like Diesel into her life. He wasn't just aggressive, he was rejecting any form of human connection. The low growls he emitted whenever she reached out only reinforced what the shelter worker had warned her about. When they arrived home, Claire took a deep breath. The suburban neighborhood was quiet, calm. It should have been the perfect place for a dog to settle, but Diesel wasn't just any dog. She opened the door, and Diesel stepped out, his posture stiff and cautious. He scanned the environment, alert and ready for anything. Claire knew she had to give him space, but also begin building trust. But what if he didn't want to trust her? For the first time since they met, Diesel's eyes shifted. There was something new there. Curiosity. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Claire took a step toward him, then another. Slowly, carefully, she reached out. Diesel flinched, his body rigid, his teeth bared in a warning. Claire froze, heart pounding. He was telling her she was crossing a boundary. She pulled back, respecting his space, Okay, Diesel, she whispered to herself. I get it. You're not ready. And yet she couldn't walk away. Something deep inside told her that this was where she was meant to be. Their bond, however difficult, was worth fighting for. The next few days were a blur of small victories and setbacks. Claire sat for hours watching Diesel pace around the living room, unsure of what to do. She tried throwing a ball, but Diesel just stared at it, confused. Sometimes he'd growl deeply, shaking the walls. But Claire didn't flinch. She knew it wasn't about her. It was his fear, his distrust that kept him on edge. Then, one evening, after what felt like an endless day of failed attempts, Diesel did something unexpected. As Claire sat on the couch exhausted, he approached her. Slowly, cautiously, he stopped just a few feet away, his eyes studying her. This time, there was no growl, no aggression, just silence. And in that silence, Claire felt something shift. Diesel had taken a small step forward, not in submission, but in willingness. It wasn't much, but it was everything. For the first time, Claire saw a glimmer of hope. This wasn't the end of their journey. It was a new beginning. No matter how long it took, she wasn't going to give up on Diesel. The days passed, each one a careful dance between progress and setbacks. But the more she worked with him, the more she saw small signs of trust. Diesel no longer flinched when she approached. Sometimes he even lay down in the same room as her, his body relaxed, though his eyes never fully left her. One rainy afternoon, Claire decided to try something different. She opened the back door and watched Diesel approach the threshold of the yard. His body was tense, his instincts telling him to stay close, but his curiosity about the outside world kept him in place. Claire crouched down, extending her hand. Come on, Diesel, she coaxed softly. Let's see what's out there. It took a few moments, but finally, Diesel stepped outside. His body remained stiff, but there was curiosity in his every movement as he sniffed the wet grass. Claire followed at a safe distance, watching for signs of distress. For the first time since he had arrived, Diesel seemed at peace, but that calm was shattered in an instant. Diesel froze, his muscles taut, his ears perked. His body went rigid, and he let out a low growl. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she watched him lunge toward the gate. Diesel, stop, she shouted, but he wasn't listening. His fear and aggression had taken over. Claire rushed forward, grabbing the leash from the hook. With a surge of adrenaline, she looped it around his collar and guided him back into the house. Inside, Diesel retreated to his corner, panting heavily. Claire stood at the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt defeated. All the progress they had made seemed to have crumbled in an instant. But as she watched Diesel, something shifted in her. She wasn't going to let this break them. This was just another challenge, another test to face together. And Claire knew, no matter how hard it got, she couldn't give up. The following days were filled with silence and uncertainty. Diesel remained distant, his eyes still haunted by the shadows of his past. But Claire refused to back down. She knew it would take time to rebuild the trust they had started to forge, piece by piece. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Claire was reading in the backyard when she heard a rustling sound followed by a low growl. Diesel was standing at the edge of the yard, watching something in the distance. But this time there was something different. His stance was calm, controlled, as if he had made a decision. He turned to look at her, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time in a long while he didn't turn away. He was waiting for her. Claire's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Come on, Diesel, she whispered, her voice steady but full of emotion. Slowly, cautiously, Diesel took a step toward her. His body was tense, unsure, but his movements were purposeful. Another step, and then another. For the first time, Diesel was choosing to trust her. Good boy, Diesel, Claire whispered, her voice breaking. She knelt down, extending her hand. Diesel stopped just a few feet away, still uncertain, but hopeful. For a long moment they just stood there, the world around them fading away. Then, with a tentative gesture, Diesel lowered his head and nuzzled her hand. It wasn't much, but it spoke volumes. Diesel had chosen to trust her, and that trust was everything. Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she stroked his fur. "I knew you could do it, Diesel," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore." And in that moment, everything changed. Diesel wasn't just a rescue dog anymore. He was family. And this was only the beginning of their new life together.